Welcome to the Spaghetti Wall, the podcast where we explore mental health, happiness, and what it really means to live a full, healthy life.
We're your hosts. I'm Jason Wilcox, licensed clinical social worker.
And I'm Dr. Thaen Saelee, licensed psychologist.
And every week we throw ideas at the wall of life and see what sticks. You'll hear stories, science, practical tools, and a whole lot of heart.
And maybe even a few laughs, because healing doesn't have to be so serious all the time.
So if you're trying to figure out life, you're not alone. This is a space for curiosity, compassion, and maybe even a little chaos.
This is the Spaghetti Wall.
Let's get into it.
So let's talk about trauma dumping. The term gets thrown around a lot, but I want to make sure that we're clear. It's different from healthy sharing. Trauma dumping is when someone unloads a massive, often raw, traumatic experience all at once, usually without checking in if the listener is ready or able to take it in.
Right? Think of it as emotional oversharing, like on steroids. Handing someone a tsunami of pain when they were expecting a gentle rain. And this is usually, it's not that it's malicious. It's born from real need, confusion, or just a lack of emotional tools.
Exactly. Sometimes it's that person's first time really opening up about this devastating event. They want to be heard and validated, but the sheer volume and intensity sometimes overwhelms whoever may be listening on the other end.
Yeah, it's all about control in a weird way. When life has felt chaotic or unsafe, dumping trauma can feel like taking the wheel of the narrative. It's here, this is my story, and you have to hear it.
Yeah, many times trauma dumping is a cry for connection or help. If I share this, maybe like this other person will finally get me. But what happens if that other person shuts down or pulls away? That can be a second trauma in its own.
Right. It's a catch-22. The dumper wants closeness, but the method often creates distance.
Yeah, I think it's important to kind of talk about the emotional toll that could happen from trauma dumping. So when trauma dumping happens in romantic relationships, it can become a huge stressor. One partner is constantly in this rescue mode and feeling like a therapist or doing the emotional labor, the emotional firefighter.
Right. And even though that sounds noble, it quickly burns people out. Nobody wants to be the emotional EMT 24/7. Even the most compassionate person hits their limit. It's the reality that your partner isn't your therapist. They don't have the skills and the ability to work through those things with the individual.
Yeah, I think sometimes the limit can turn into, burnout. It could look like burnout and oftentimes can feel like resentment. So you might hear stuff like, oh, I love you, but I can't be your only safe place. And that might sting.
Yeah, and trauma dumping can disrupt the balance of intimacy. It can feel like there's no room left for lightness, joy, or even just regular everyday connection. The relationship starts to feel like a therapy session, intense, draining, and kind of one-sided.
Yeah, I think it can create awkwardness or just confusion, disorientation too. The person might think something like, what do I say? How do I fix this? How do I support someone who's drowning in so much pain and not sink myself? So that confusion oftentimes make people shut down or become distant.
Yeah, which is so unfortunate. It leaves the dumper feeling even more isolated when, really we want them to not feel isolated. It's just that catch-22 again.
Mm-hmm. So in my work, I've noticed that people trauma dump for a few reasons. One is that trauma doesn't always come neatly packaged for us, right? So to process it slowly is usually the process in therapy. Sometimes it bursts out all at once, kind of like a dam breaking.
Absolutely. And some folks, that I've worked with have never been taught healthy ways to share or process trauma. It's like they only know one volume, full blast.
Yeah, the full blast, sometimes I call that flooding, right? Like it's just coming on and on. Plus, there's this human need to be seen and understood. So trauma can feel so invisible otherwise. Um, so dumping it all can feel like, here's the truth of me, accept it or not. And that could be pretty detrimental to some relationships.
Yeah. And then there's the fear factor. What if I don't dump it all and you never really know me? That's a terrifying thought for someone who's survived deep wounds.
Yeah, I think the connection definitely there can be broken. And it's so unfortunate when folks aren't trained or have the skill to be introspective and to pause during these conversations.
So, how do we hold compassion and boundaries? Because boundaries aren't about shutting down, they're about protecting the relationship.
Right. Yes. So, like the client says, it's like breathing underwater. If you don't come up for air, you're going to drown. So, setting boundaries is like coming up for air together.
Oh, I love that. And it starts with honest conversations, something like, I want to hear your story, but I also want to make sure I can really be here for you. Can we pace this?
Yeah. Or you can say something like, I'm here to support you, but sometimes I need a break so I don't get so overwhelmed because this stuff is heavy. Saying this isn't really rejection, it's self care. I always say boundaries are kindness. When you have boundaries, you're setting kind connections.
I think I would just highlight that really quick, what you said, that saying it isn't rejection. There's so many clients I've worked with when I start working with them in couples work, and we'll start kind of getting some healthy boundaries in place. And at the onset, they often feel rejected when it's not about rejection, it's about a healthy boundary. So I just think that's important to remember that sometimes when we feel rejection, it may not actually be. But, also for the dumper, a helpful step is to seek other outlets too, like therapy. That's a big one. Support groups, journaling, places designed for the full trauma unpacking.
Yeah, I love those suggestions, Jason. I think your partner isn't your therapist. I think that's important to remember. It's a really distinct relationship that can stay healthy when we are knowing that like this person isn't trained or maybe in the place or have the skills to contain it all. I had my client tell me the other day, Jason, like, oh, ever since my husband and I have been in therapy together, so they've gone to individual separately and then couples. She said, "Oh, we talk like we're in a therapy session. Like it's just so, regulated, calm, no one's activated." And she started laughing at that. And I said, "Yeah, how does that feel?" She said, "It feels good." And so it's not that we therapy each other. It's just that when we learn skills to talk about things, the connection can be strengthened.
Right, absolutely. It's interesting though, this whole topic we're talking about right now. I've often helped, again, when I'm doing couples work, where I'll help them kind of see this, because therapy and mental health sometimes is almost invisible. It feels like you can't quite see it like you can, or experience it like you can in a appendicitis or a heart attack. Because if you're having appendicitis, you're not going to run to your partner and be like, "Oh my gosh, can you cut this appendix out of me?" That would just be kind of not helpful.
I'll look at you and say, "What?"
Right. And so sometimes we can't see the fact that mental health needs a professional, and we don't realize that we're bringing something that we need professional help for, like trauma, and we're bringing it to someone for them to deal with it for us. Our partner, who's not trained, doesn't know how to create that space. But again, what's great is you can build skills around it in a partnership with healthy boundaries, ways to communicate. But ultimately, if you're having the trauma, you're feeling like you need this trauma dumping, the therapy is a great place to take it.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, I love that reminder, Jason. So, what are some practical tools for the receiver of this information that we might offer our listeners?
Well, if you're the dumper, try this. Before you launch into heavy stuff, check in. Ask, hey, are you in a place where you can listen right now? That gives the other person choice.
I love that. I always teach in nonviolent communication. We talk about asking for permission so that, both parties are in the same headspace to share, receive, and talk about. Um, You don't have to tell your entire life story in one sitting, I would say. It's okay to say, hey, today I want to share this piece. I think pacing is such a necessary element to calming our nervous system and healing hurt wounds from the past and replaying and processing some of those traumatic moments.
Yeah, so pace it. And if you're the listener, use I statements. I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed right now. Can we pause and pick this up later? This keeps it about your experience without blaming.
I think the other tip I want to put out there is that for the listener, it's really important to find your own support network. If you're often the emotional firefighter, you're putting out the fires for your partner or your friend. It's important that you get your own self-care. It's important that you have your own breaks and you find your own folks who you can lean on in a kind, gentle way that supports your kind of renewal and recharge and your ability to take on that role, I think, as the listener.
Yeah. It's important to be self-aware. I've seen a lot of hurt from people that go out and, again, their intention with the trauma dumping is to connect with others, to really be in a place where they feel like people get them and they feel that relationship. And so being aware of that need you have inside, there's nothing wrong with it, and know where to take it, how to operate with it, how to not cause problems in something you're trying to build with that connection and relationship. So just something to think about as we talk about trauma dumping.
Yeah, I think the last suggestion I would throw out there is just to be intentional. Oftentimes, the individuals that I work with, when we think about why we're sharing something with this person, to think about the intention. What are my intentions in sharing this really heavy thing about myself and my past? And in this way, we ensure that we're doing it with purpose. We're doing it with awareness, like you're saying, Jason. And there's care, pacing, and respect there when we're adding all these elements of asking for permission, asking to pause, knowing your own limits, and having some good, healthy boundaries around sharing and when to say this is too much.
Yeah. And again, remembering that if someone does say, hey, I can't have this conversation, or I need to step away, or I can't be there for you, it's not rejection. It just means that it's too much for them in that moment. And it's not about you being too much or anything like that. It's just about they need some healthy boundaries around it too.
Yeah, I think it's often times when trauma dumping goes unchecked, people can oftentimes feel unsafe or too exposed or too vulnerable. I have people tell me, oh, I think I overshared. I think I said too much, or I think I told them way too much about myself and now I feel embarrassed. So I think it's so important to just check ourselves in those moments and just know that we're human. Sharing might be messy. Hopefully some of these tips that we're offering today can provide some clarity and structure. So let's all commit to checking in before unloading, offering empathy without that exhaustion, and remembering that healing is a marathon and not a sprint. That's it for today's episode of The Spaghetti Wall. If something in this session hits home, you're not alone. These are the kinds of real conversations we all need more of.
Seriously, relationships are messy. Healing is messy. And life, yeah, it's definitely messy. But that's exactly where the growth happens.
If you found this episode helpful, share it with someone you care about. And don't forget to subscribe. New episodes drop every week with real stories, honest insight, and practical tools.
And if you want to learn more about the work we do, or are looking for support in your own relationship, head over to avidcounseling.org. We'd love to connect.
Until next time, keep showing up.
And stay curious.
And remember, the mess is the method.